Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. Um, Nomás una pequeña noticia. Ese mismo video voy a hacer después de inglés, va a ser en español. Más fácil para mí y creo que también para ustedes. ¿Okay? La misma información. Por eso quizá un video un poco menos largo. Por eso puede apagar esto y prender y busque lo siguiente. Va a estar el título en español y todo. Okay. All right, I was just letting them know that the video is going to be in Spanish. A second video, we'll do two, because it's just a lot easier for me and probably for you too. Okay, so I mentioned that the next phase after Easter is going to be different in what we're doing. We have very few weeks left. May is coming up very quickly. What I have really prepared you for these last few weeks is what's called the Sacrament of Penance and a life of penitence. What is that? It's Christian life, okay? Now, what we've done to the Sacrament of Penance is we've relegated it to just going to confession. But as I've shown you, it's much more. It's all those good works, it's prayer, and it's fasting. It's Christian life. And there's a lot to it. Okay. It goes into everything. But what I want to focus on is how to make sure it's included in everything that you do. You guys are pretty young. Okay. I really don't have anybody who's anywhere near my age in the class. Okay. I'm not going to tell you my age. Well, everybody knows I'm 58. So none of you are there. So this is, you guys are living a very, looks like you live pretty good lives. You're very youthful. So you have a lot that you're doing, and you need to include the Christian life. I mean, you need to realize that Christianity, or the faith in Jesus Christ, better said, is what gives purpose to everything you're doing. I shouldn't even use that word purpose, but that's the kind of way we talk nowadays. All right, let me get into the real content of what I'm talking about today. So we've talked about doing good works. We talked about a little bit about prayer, and I'm going to do more with the Our Father today. And I can't remember what her name was. She mentioned about the sheet of prayers. Yeah, okay. I got it prepared. Okay. I don't do scanning stuff really good and all that. So you'll pick up a copy on Sunday. All right. And you have lots of time to learn these prayers. Matter of fact, the whole purpose of the prayers is that you say them every day. Every one I'm going to give to you. All these little prayers. And you go, what? No, of course you can do it. This is the whole thing about being a Christian. This is what Christianity is about. The reason we exist as Christians. Okay? All right. So, the first important point that I need to get to you about penance. Okay. The word itself, right? Right. We use the word penitentiary. Why? Because we need to put people in for a place of punishment and reform to rethink the path of life that they've taken. And so we put people in penitentiaries for decades sometimes because of their crimes, the type of crime and the repetition of crime, or just because we don't like the way they look. We don't like them. And we're able to give them lots and lots of years. I had a friend of mine, he made a big mistake one night. Okay. And it was a big one. And he could have gotten off with a relatively small sentence in the sense of it's a few years because it was involved in act of violence. But this is a guy with no criminal record and military service. And it was the night without drinking. Something bad happened, but he hurt the wrong person. And so instead of getting a few years to cover all of the crimes that he did, which were a few, not a lot, but there were a few, he got a prison sentence for each one, and they were what they were stacked. Okay, they weren't consecutive, meaning that they were done at the same time. They were stacked one after the other, and he was in there for a long time for one crime that he committed. But it's just there's a way that the penal system works is intent, and then other little smaller things that you did, and then perhaps the actual act of violence that was done. Okay, never justified violence. Yeah, he deserves some time, but there were circumstances, and instead of giving them a chance, just a few years, so they can get back on track. He wasn't a bad person. He wasn't doing anything any illegal. Just that he reacted to a violent situation violently. And they made him pay lots and lots of decades of his life gone for it. Okay. Now that's our attitude about how to use the penitential system. And that's why it's called penitential. It follows from what the church developed as a way to deal with people's offenses, because people offended. And when Christians first sinned, or I should say, when the first Christians sinned, they weren't usually given a second chance to come back because they were supposed to have gotten all that out of their system. And so there are 3 crimes that they could commit in which you would never have a chance to be reconciled back to the church or to Christ. You were left to God's mercy or judgment. You're condemned to hell. You were excommunicated, meaning you are no longer able to take communion with us. Couldn't go back. You couldn't step inside of a church again. And for a few centuries, these 3 crimes, and they are adultery, okay, they are murder, and the other one is blasphemy or sacrilege. And they were common for different reasons. The murder charge was leveled at anybody who was in the military service. So you couldn't be a Christian and in the military service. That's why a lot of men and not women, sorry, a lot of men who went into the military, when they became a Christian, had to leave. It was because they could not murder, they could not kill. We were that strict about it. There were no circumstances in which you were allowed to kill, not even in self-defense. You're not allowed to kill. We changed our tune, especially as we became part of the Roman Empire. The emperor adopted us, and then we realized, oh wow, the world is crazy. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of people coming to destroy the empire, and to serve the emperor was considered something that was good. It was a godly thing to do, and so even military service was allowed, including killing the enemies of the empire. All right. I mean, we changed our tune on that, but not for about almost 400 years. And then there's this then there's blasphemy and sacrilege. This is where, during the persecutions, if you wanted to save your life or the life of somebody you loved, you had to denounce Christ, and sometimes they would make you step on a cross or spit on a cross, or make you offer incense to one of the gods or to the emperor, or eat meat that had been sacrificed and offered to one of the false gods. And this blasphemy or sacrilege, it's also another word is profanation. That's a lesser charge. But these are very serious to the point to where you're denying Christ. And if you did that, instead of allowing yourself to be murdered, instead of allowing your wife, your children, your friends to be murdered, this was a hard thing to do, because they would threaten to kill people you loved in order to get you to deny Christ. And to be able to stay so strong that your mind was thinking, if they kill them or rape them or whatever they did to them, no matter what, they're going to go straight to heaven. And I can live with that. Most people couldn't. A lot of people renounced Christ in order to save their life or the life of somebody else they loved. It's sad and that it had to happen that way, but that was the reality. And then adultery. Now, adultery is simply this: if you are a married person, you can have no sexual relations with another married person, or another person at all. That's not your spouse. That's the basic idea of what adultery is. Uh, it could also include uh, being in a marriage that wasn't lawful or sanctioned by the society. That ranges a lot of different types of marriages, including to slaves. You may decide to marry one of your slaves. You can marry somebody from another religion or culture. You weren't allowed to do those things, uh, as well as well. There are things that are in the scriptures that tell you that you cannot marry your father's wife, basically meaning you can't marry your stepmother, right? Um, that's that was not uncommon, considering that usually stepmom was about your age or younger, and once dad was gone, sometimes you just fell in love, or you figured you just take care of each other. Well, but it was considered adultery. And even St. Paul denounced it in the first letter to the Corinthians. You look at these situations, and they're pretty serious. I mean, they are terrible sins. But at the same time, you go, we make mistakes or we're put into situations that are just so wrong. I should also remind people that women are almost always forced into marriage, okay? Marriages were all arranged. You never chose somebody you wanted to marry. Christians were one of the first groups of people that actually said, you should probably like each other. You should want each other. And we actually were the ones who actually put in the system of vows and actually what do you call it? Interrogation, asking the questions. Okay. Like, do you want to get married to this person? Are you doing this of your own free will? Are you being forced? Because you're being forced, we can't marry you. We can't allow you to be married. Now, that's what Christians started asking. But only really after we became legal. Otherwise, we just follow everybody else's rules when it came to marriage. You don't marry somebody who's, a close relative, meaning you have the same grandparents. You can't get married to somebody if you have the same grandparents. Um, and, um, you couldn't marry somebody who was too young to say yes. And when's that age? For some, it was 5. Okay. And our societies have been pretty darn sick when it comes to this thing. That's what I mean by marriages were always arranged. Uh, so especially for the women, and mainly for the women. The guys, they just went along with it. It's usually to their advantage. But the women, and nobody ever asked if you wanted to get married. And that's why adultery had this part of, where your heart comes in, where your desire comes in, or where you fall in love with people. And it happens. Falling in love is nothing new in the human race. That's written about a lot in the Bible. We do fall in love, and it's a beautiful thing. I would hope that you have, or you are in love. It's wonderful, but it can lead you into choosing the wrong people. Adultery includes also uh, sex with this person of the same gender. Doesn't matter about your feelings; it's always wrong. Um, and sex with other creatures than human beings. Sorry, it happens a lot. It shouldn't happen, but it does. And of course, with children is always unacceptable, beyond unacceptable. Okay, it's the greatest of perversions, and yet our definition of a child is that child someone who's under 18, or under the age of 16, under the age of 14, under the age of 10. Okay, we've moved the definition of child, and to this day, in parts of the world, child is, yeah, it's still not defined. All right, we've made a definite thing of saying it's 18 years of age. Why we chose that age, that's kind of more of that goes along with the way we educated our children. And by the age of 18, you should be able to take care of yourself. That's the idea. Okay, but the church and her law still allows 14-year-old women, girls, and 16-year-old men, boys, uh, to get married. But that depends also the culture that you live in, the place that you live in. We don't recommend it at all, and we've encouraged the church throughout the world to raise that age limit to at least 18 years of age. Again, why 18? In a lot of European countries, it's 16. If you want to get married at 16, you're fine. By that time, you're usually out of high school. You should be able to get a job, take care of yourself. There's no problem with you getting married at 16. Okay, so that's a different culture than our United States of America culture, where we keep you in school to 18. Okay, now I've made that very long thing about why those things that we punished in the early days. We were extremely careful uh, with our faith life, that we didn't want it to be jeopardized. And we want to let you know that there was a line you could not cross. Okay? You could not cross this line or you were out. People did. And for all the reasons I've just already mentioned, a bunch of them. So we developed a system of penitence, a way to come back. There's a lot of different things that were done in different places. Eventually, after about 800 years, 900 years, they developed this system of the penitentiary, which was, instead of not a prison, not a prison. It was a set of penances, of works, prayers, and fastings that can be done for whatever sin you've committed. Most of the time, when you go to confession nowadays, they're just going to tell you to go say some prayers. You know, 5 Our Fathers, 5 Hail Marys, or they'll ask you to go and read from the Bible. One of my favorites. I love to tell people, go read Psalm this or read this book in the Bible. No. Well, if you have to read a book in the Bible, you were bad. Okay. Or a chapter in the Bible. You know, so chapters, John chapter 8 or something, depending. And it's something that we think that would help you, that would encourage you, that you would get something out of it. So that's the way we approach penitence now. It's not a punishment for having failed. It's a way to come back. Right? And this includes fastings. You could be assigned, to, and this was a very common thing for those terrible crimes I just mentioned about murder and adultery, and blasphemy, sacrilege. Um, you could be sent on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Now, remember, I'm talking about 1,200 years ago. Okay. And so they could say, you're going to go I'm going to send you on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And you're going to go there and you're going to go see so and so. And they're going to basically give you a stamp or a little letter saying you did it. And then you're back in the church. And that's how we got all these pilgrimages, these long caravans of people going, to Rome, going to the Holy Land, especially. Okay. So we had, because people had sinned really bad, and their priest decided to really stick it to them. And so they said, no, this is what you can do. Now, there were books written so that a priest couldn't just decide to send somebody they hated. I hate you. I'm going to send you to the Holy Land. No, you can't decide that. It had to be a certain type of sin that they did. And then they can send you. All right. So these things were very common. So that's why people had to take these long trips on foot, crossing many countries, and pretty much begging along the way. Uh, But people found ways to deal with it, and all on the way, little hotels, posadas, inns, whatever you want to call them, they popped up on the roads, and so you could always find a place to eat, to sleep that was pretty cheap, and and fairly safe. Yeah, people would be there to cheat you. Okay, people would be there to steal your stuff. All right, you try to be very simple, and maybe you sold your house or you sold your farm to do this. I mean, these were serious things, and if you didn't do them, you were shunned. You were rejected by everybody in your family and in the town. You were not allowed to talk to you. You could never get married to somebody. It was bad. I mean, the way we treated each other. That was the punishment part until you went and did this penance. Now, for most sins, which were just personal individual sins, you said something bad to somebody, you lied, you stole something. Um, you would have to. You could do. You could pay money. You could pay fines. You could do a whole series of prayers, etc. Now, in the early days of the church, um, I'm talking about within the first 200, 300 years, the penances were pretty severe. You would literally sit outside wherever the Christians were gathering, whatever house they were gathering in, and you would sit outside and you would beg for mercy, beg forgiveness for your sin. And this could go on for quite a long time, but it gave you a chance to clean up your life, to purify yourself, to suffer some being separated. But at the same time, the Christians community was praying for you and praying that you'll persevere, you'll make it through however long it takes. It's the origin of the 40 days of Lent. Okay, that 40 days before Easter, pretty much everybody went into penitential mode, did a lot of fasting. They stopped eating meat. They stopped having sex. Even if you were married, they said no. You stopped working for 40 days. You would just stop. Okay. And then after the 40 days, there would be a way that the church would absolve everybody. There would be a praying of forgiveness and thanksgiving. So then you can go into the whole night of the Easter vigil, and it would lasted all night long, and be renewed in your baptism. And those who were going to come in as being Christians would be able to do that. So it became the pathway also for new Christians to come in. They would spend the 40 days doing the same thing and letting go of their sinfulness. And then on Easter night, they would be baptized. Right? But it started really as a way for us to come back to God, to do penance, lots of good works, lots of praying, lots of fasting. And we would do that in order to come back into the church life, especially if we were uh, caught doing something very terrible and we hurt people. We were given that chance to really be purified. So that's where the whole system of penitence came from. Later, it just became the normal thing we do. We always do some sort of penance because we know we sin. We sin small ways most of the time. We just small things every day. Uh, Very rarely do we have a big sin every day. I'm talking about breaking one of the 10 Commandments, right? Had you read those, you're not going to put other gods before God. But if you decide not to go to Mass on Sunday because you wanted to go to a ball game, then guess what? You just put another God before God. I know. You're going, but it's so and so was playing so and so, and it was it's the game. And going, it's just a game. That's all. Okay. We're talking about your life with Christ, which is first. You had this wonderful chance to say, no, Christ is first. And you decided, the game. Nah, can't do that. Okay. So be encouraged. to understand that our Christian life is a constant work of penitence. When do we go to confession? Well, I remember that sheet I gave to you. It pretty much just simply says, okay, that you go to confession when you realize, wow, I've got a lot that I've done. I have, there's a lot of things. I have these bad habits that I keep doing over and over again. It's one thing that, I let slip some really bad words. There's some anger. I cussed somebody out. I was extremely angry at so and so. Yeah, that's one thing. But then I do it all the time. And I go, once I realize, yeah, I do this a lot, that's when you go to confession. You should be able to understand, tell yourself. And you come and you say to the priest, forgive me for this sin. This is what I've done. This is my bad habits that I have. Okay. Not for every single little thing you do, every single bad word you say. You don't have to come in every day. You can if you want. You can do that here. We're the only ones that have confessions twice a day, every single day. I think there might be one other parish, Wasti, San Secondo de Asti has it. They have it every day. Come to think of it, I think St. James in Paris still does it too, because I started it. I think they still do it at least once a day. I'm not sure, but at least every parish offers at least once a week, even if it is for only 45 minutes. There's still a chance. It's good to go throughout the year, to go often, to go once a month, especially realize I'm in a bad mood all the time. I'm very angry, and I say bad things. I don't do things well. I don't do the right things. I cause a lot of hurt and sadness in other people. That's why you go to confession. To literally just dump this stuff and get it out of you. The power of that small moment, with the church. It's just you and the priest, because we don't want people knowing all your stuff, all right? But in that small moment where you come before the church in the person of the priest and you just dump all this stuff out, okay? You are dumping it. You are unloading yourself of this. What you're saying is the church is Jesus Christ, and I am being freed by Jesus Christ as I let go of all of this stuff that I've been carrying with me. I surrender. It's gone. So that's what penitence is. And what a penitential life simply is that every day I want to do something good. You remember the old Boy Scout motto, to do a good deed every day, to be thrifty and reverent. And there's something, I think honest was in there somewhere. There was, that's beautiful, the Boy Scout oath. I never learned the Girl Scout oath, but everybody was exposed to it one time. But the whole idea of doing a good deed every day. But the idea is that we want to do everything well. We want to do good all the time. We would rather spend our lives doing good things, repairing things that are broken, fixing things or people that are hurt, that are broken, feeding the poor, feeding and taking care of the sick. And for those who are in prison, how do I encourage a person in prison? Jesus gave us the simple outline of what to do every day in Matthew chapter 25, where he says, when I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was thirsty, did you give me to drink? When I was naked, did you clothe me? Right? When I was a stranger, I had nowhere to live, I had nowhere to go, I didn't know anybody. Did you welcome me? Literally take me into your house. Did you take care of me? Okay. When I was sick, did you bring me food? Did you watch over me? Did you make sure I was getting some kind of care? And when I was in prison, did you do the same? Because in the time of Jesus, when you were in prison, you were in prison. And you weren't fed. You weren't given water. You were just stuck in a prison, a little cell. Usually it's like a cave or a box. And you just sat there. And your family could come and bring you food and drink. Huh? But you also usually wind up having to bribe somebody in order to be able to get in. And it was pretty bad. All right. It was terrible. So to be able to actually, for someone to do that kind of good work for somebody in prison, and usually you went to prison because you owed somebody money. If you did something wrong or you broke a law, you were punished physically, severely, quickly. No trials. Okay. If two people said you did this, they would just, whatever the punishment was. Okay. It could be beatings, it could be lashes, it could be cutting off body parts, uh, whatever. But when it came to money, if you owed money, you literally had to go to jail, to prison. You would stay there until your family, if you had any, would pay back the debt. Then you were let out of prison. Okay, so visiting you was very important because you were going to be in there quite a while until they sold something or somebody in the family and able to pay off the debt. All right. So those are simple things that you can apply every day because there's always people who are hungry or thirsty. And you can even spiritualize it. I'm hungering for love. I am thirsty for peace. I am naked because I emotionally hurt. I've been abused, and I have no comfort. I have no peace in my soul. I'm a stray. I'm nobody loves me. Nobody cares. I have nobody or nothing. I've been rejected by my family because I'm gay or whatever. And just to befriend, to care for somebody, to work with somebody, just to love them is huge. I'm from an enemy people. Your people and our people have learned to hate each other over the years. To show mercy, I've seen it with a lot of people who've been in war, and they were able to show mercy, and a lot of people have been in war who couldn't show mercy and really hate themselves for it. They regret that they couldn't, but at the same time they go, but we were at war. Either I die or they die. And it's sad to have to come to that decision. Huh? What do we do to help a person heal from that? See, these are the things that we have to deal with day in and day out, more and more. And people who have been abused in past, and whole groups of people, even whole races of people, if you want to put it that way, how do we make up for all that? What's the penitence that must be done? Because you can never get rid of what happened. But somehow we can bring a healing together again, coming together and saying, it was bad. And we say no to it. What do we have to do to make up for the pain that was caused? To do what we have to do something. And the church has always been aware of that and tried to help our people to do that. Okay. So that's what a penitential life is. And let's face it, whatever relationship you have, there's always something where we realize I didn't do so well with so and so. I made a big mistake. I really messed up. What am I going to do? How do I find my way back? There's lots of little things you can do. There's lots of kindnesses that you can do. Tons of prayer and lots of sacrifices. That's what the fasting is, okay? Lots of sacrifices. Okay, well, I went way longer than I thought I was going to go. It's 34 minutes. I didn't plan on that. So I got to do this whole thing in Spanish as well, so I better get going. All right, so I have one other thing I'm going to do in the next couple of days. It's going to prepare you for what's happening on Sunday, okay? So God's peace to you and blessings. We'll see you.